The courtroom was impossibly cold, though the sun shone brightly outside. Sophia Daniels sat at the back, her fingers gripping the edge of the bench, as the judge's gavel hit the wood with a finality that echoed in her chest. Petitioner Olivia Grant has submitted sufficient evidence to pursue the legal declaration of Sophia Daniels as deceased. The words hung in the air, and Sophia's mind reeled. Dead? She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this courtroom, not at this moment. A chance encounter with an old friend had kept her in the city an extra week. She had planned to visit her mother's grave, spend a few quiet days away from the chaos of her life. Instead, she was here, watching her own sister, no, half-sister, stand at the front of the courtroom, all poise and precision, spinning lies that felt like daggers. My sister disappeared over a year ago, Olivia was saying, her voice quivering with just the right amount of emotion. No phone calls. No emails. No evidence that she's alive. It has been devastating for our family, but it's time to move forward. It's what Sophia would have wanted. Sophia gritted her teeth. Move forward? By declaring her dead and pocketing the inheritance left by their father? The inheritance Olivia had coveted since the reading of the will, a fortune split unequally, with Sophia receiving the lion's share due to her father's explicit wishes. Olivia had masked her fury then, but now Sophia saw it for what it was, cold, calculated betrayal. The prosecutor cleared his throat and held up a glossy photograph, handing it to the judge. This was taken from Sophia Daniels' last known residence, Your Honor. The apartment has been abandoned for over 12 months. A few muffled gasps rippled through the small courtroom. Sophia's chest tightened. It was true, she had left her apartment after a particularly devastating falling out with Olivia. But she hadn't disappeared. She'd moved overseas for work, a choice that seemed logical at the time. Now, staring at Olivia's meticulously curated grief, Sophia understood just how naive she'd been. Your Honor, Olivia continued, glancing at the photograph with a somber expression, I have done everything I can to locate her. I even hired private investigators. Nothing. It wasn't until the judge called a recess that Sophia's legs finally moved. Rising from her seat, she pushed through the heavy doors of the courtroom, her pulse pounding in her ears. In the hallway, Sophia spotted Olivia standing with her lawyer. They didn't see her, their heads bent close, their voices low. She watched Olivia smile, a sly, victorious curve of her lips that made Sophia's stomach turn. Not dead. Not yet. Sophia walked out of the courthouse, the sun glaring down on her like an unblinking eye. This was no longer just about money. It was about justice. About uncovering the truth that had been hidden behind Olivia's lies. And Sophia Daniels wasn't going to let her half-sister write the final chapter of her life. The clatter of rain against the apartment's single-pane window always reminded Sophia Daniels of home. Boston rain wasn't just a weather pattern, it was a sound, a feeling, a memory. Sophia had grown up in a tiny two-bedroom walk-up on the outskirts of the city. The floors creaked when you walked across them, the radiator hissed angrily in the winter, and the kitchen was barely big enough for one person to stand in. But to Sophia and her mother Lisa, it was everything. Lisa Daniels was the kind of mother who believed in the power of hard work. Dreams are built one brick at a time, she'd say, her hands covered in flour as she baked yet another batch of cookies for the local church bake sale. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning houses by day and tending a diner by night, yet somehow, she always made time to sit at the kitchen table with Sophia and help her with her school projects. Knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you, Lisa would remind her, tapping the textbook they were poring over. Sophia absorbed those lessons. By the time she was 10, she was running errands for the neighbors, saving the quarters and dimes they gave her to buy her first camera, a cheap plastic thing with a lens that scratched easily. By 16, she was taking portraits of friends in the park, charging just enough to cover the cost of film and developing. Olivia, on the other hand, came into their lives like a hurricane when Sophia was 13. Lisa had explained it carefully. Olivia was the daughter of Lisa's former husband, Richard Grant, a man Lisa had left years before due to his infidelity. Olivia was the product of his second marriage, but after the tragic death of her mother, she'd come to live with them. From the moment Olivia moved in, the differences between the girls were clear. Olivia arrived with expensive suitcases and glossy magazines tucked under her arm. She loved makeup, designer handbags, and every shiny thing the world had to offer. At 14, she was already scrawling notes about her future mansion in her diary, dreaming of wealth and status. Sophia admired her sister at first, her confidence, her charm, but it didn't take long for admiration to curdle into frustration. Olivia had a way of making everything about herself. She borrowed Sophia's clothes without asking, flipped through Sophia's photo albums with a smirk, and complained incessantly about their small apartment. "Don't you ever want more?" Olivia had once asked, wrinkling her nose as she surveyed their modest living room. "I mean, this can't be it for you, right?" Sophia had bristled. "What's wrong with it?" "It's ours. We've worked hard for it." Olivia had only laughed, the sound dismissive. "Hard work doesn't make you rich, Sophia. Knowing the right people does." Their father's occasional visits didn't help. Richard Grant was a man with a booming laugh and a wallet full of excuses. He'd bring Olivia lavish gifts, a charm bracelet, a new phone, once even a small ruby pendant, but he'd always leave empty promises for Sophia. "You're so talented, sweetheart," he'd say. "One day, I'll send you to Paris to study photography. Just you wait." But Paris never came. And while Olivia seemed to thrive on Richard's attention, Sophia grew more independent, determined to build her life without waiting for someone else to hand her anything. By the time Sophia turned 18, she'd saved enough from her photo gigs to buy her first professional camera. She attended community college by day and took on freelance photography jobs by night, capturing weddings, graduations, and the occasional moody artist looking for a headshot. She loved it, the way a single frame could tell an entire story. Meanwhile, Olivia was always scheming. She moved from one failed business idea to the next, borrowing money from their father and leaving a trail of debt behind her. "She's ambitious," Richard would defend her, but Sophia knew better. Olivia wasn't building anything, she was scavenging. As the years passed, their relationship frayed. Olivia resented Sophia's ability to carve out her own path, and Sophia grew weary of Olivia's constant manipulation. When their father died and left the bulk of his estate to Sophia, Olivia's simmering bitterness boiled over. "I deserved that money," Olivia had screamed at Sophia during the reading of the will. "I'm his daughter too." "He left you something," Sophia replied quietly, though her heart ached. "It's just not the same amount." "It's nothing compared to what he left you." Olivia spat. "He always loved you more. You and your perfect, struggling life." Sophia had walked away then, but the memory of Olivia's words lingered. For years, she tried to hold on to the thread of sisterhood between them, but it had snapped under the weight of greed and jealousy. And now, standing on the brink of a legal battle to prove she was still alive, Sophia understood the harsh truth. Olivia had never been a sister. She'd been a rival waiting for her moment to strike. But Olivia had underestimated Sophia's resolve. Raised by Lisa Daniels, Sophia knew how to fight, one brick at a time. Sophia's fingers trembled as she opened the worn envelope. The name on the return address, Lucas Thompson, felt foreign and familiar all at once. She had stumbled across the letter among her mother's old belongings, a faded box tucked away in the attic. Her heart raced as she unfolded the thick paper, the scent of aged ink and faint cologne rising to meet her. "To my daughter, Sophia Daniels. If you're reading this, it means I am gone. I hope this letter finds you well, even if it's long overdue. There are things you need to know, truths I failed to bring to light when I had the chance." The words blurred as Sophia blinked rapidly, forcing herself to focus. Sophia had always known Lisa was protective, but now she realized the depth of her mother's fear. Lisa had avoided speaking about Sophia's father beyond vague references to a brief relationship. "It was better for us to be on our own," Lisa would say when pressed. Sophia had assumed her father was simply disinterested or, like Richard, unreliable. But Judge Lucas Thompson wasn't the kind of man who disappeared out of disinterest. Born into an influential family, Lucas had climbed the ranks of the judiciary with his razor-sharp mind and commanding presence. His decisions shaped lives, policies, and entire communities. Yet behind the public facade lay a man wrestling with a private battle, one that began with the discovery of Sophia's existence. The letter revealed a different man than the one Sophia had imagined. When your mother left, I tried to find her, to find you. But Lisa was determined to raise you without the shadow of my family's control. She knew what they were capable of, the influence they wield over anyone they touch. She was right to be wary. Sophia's stomach twisted. What had Lisa endured to keep her safe? What had she sacrificed to shield her from this hidden legacy? The letter continued. Years later, I saw a photograph. A young woman with your mother's eyes, standing in the background of a news article about a photography exhibit. It was you. I wanted to reach out then, but I hesitated. My position, my family's reach, it would have disrupted your life. I couldn't bear to take away your freedom. Tears blurred Sophia's vision as she pictured her father seeing her for the first time through a photograph. How strange, she thought, to be both known and unknown. The inheritance came next, a revelation that left Sophia breathless. When I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I've created a trust in your name, meant to ensure your independence and secure your future. It's not just wealth, Sophia. It's a chance to live without the burdens my family would try to impose on you. My lawyer will guide you when the time comes. The thought of a fortune, money she hadn't earned, tied to a man she barely knew, felt overwhelming. Yet it wasn't the money that struck her most. It was the knowledge that someone had cared enough to think of her even when she was absent from his life. Lisa's fear now made perfect sense. Judge Lucas Thompson's family, wealthy and politically powerful, would have viewed Sophia as an inconvenience, a threat to their pristine reputation. Lisa had chosen to disappear, raising Sophia in quiet determination, away from the influence of people who might have tried to shape her into something she wasn't. Sophia set the letter down, her mind spinning. Her father's legacy wasn't just the trust he'd left behind, it was the questions he raised. Why had he waited so long to reach out? And what would Olivia do if she learned about this hidden inheritance? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was certain. Her father's past had just collided with her present, and Sophia was standing at the intersection of it all. The snow-covered peaks of the Himalayas stretched endlessly before Sophia, their sheer magnificence humbling her. She adjusted her camera, the cold biting her gloved fingers as she captured the golden light of dawn kissing the jagged peaks. This assignment was supposed to be a dream come true, a rare opportunity to photograph remote mountain villages and document the lives of people untouched by the modern world. But even as she pressed the shutter, a nagging unease lingered in the back of her mind. The satellite phone tucked into her gear bag sat silent. The erratic signal in these remote regions made communication nearly impossible. Emails went unread, calls unanswered. She had assured herself that life back home could wait until she returned. Back home, Olivia had other plans. It started with the discovery of the trust. Olivia had stumbled upon the information while visiting the lawyer who handled their late father's estate. She had feigned innocence, pretending to inquire about some trivial paperwork, when a stray comment from the assistant tipped her off. Sophia hasn't claimed the trust yet? Olivia had asked, keeping her voice light. The assistant hesitated. Well, Judge Thompson's trust is set to transfer soon, but there are legal formalities to finalize. Olivia's mind raced. She knew Sophia had been off-grid for weeks, working on some lofty project in the mountains. It was the perfect opportunity. Olivia's plan unfolded with chilling precision. First, she forged documents to expedite her claim to the trust. A few falsified legal papers, coupled with her uncanny ability to manipulate people, convinced the necessary parties that she had been named as an alternate beneficiary in case of Sophia's death. Next, Olivia staged a memorial service. She had always been a master of theatrics, and this was no exception. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she addressed a gathering of carefully selected acquaintances and distant family members. Sophia's passion for photography took her to dangerous places, Olivia said, her voice trembling. She lived fully, but her work carried risks. We believe she perished in a tragic accident. The fabricated story gained traction, especially after Olivia leaked it to a local news outlet. A brief article ran with a photo of Sophia smiling in front of a Nepalese village, the caption reading, "Beloved photographer lost during expedition." With public sentiment on her side, Olivia manipulated legal channels to solidify her claim. She argued that Sophia's prolonged absence, coupled with the remote location of her last known assignment, was sufficient grounds to declare her deceased. While Olivia schemed, Sophia remained blissfully unaware, focused on her work. The villagers she stayed with were kind, offering her meals of lentils and rice cooked over an open flame. At night, under the vast Himalayan sky, she'd sit by the fire, reviewing the day's photos and marveling at how small her world back home seemed in comparison to this majestic isolation. Yet, even in those moments of peace, something felt off. She'd catch herself staring at the satellite phone, wondering why no one had called or left a message. Was it the signal? Or was it something else? Back in the city, Olivia's final move was the most ruthless. She drained Sophia's accounts, using her legal authority as the beneficiary of the trust. The lawyer, convinced by Olivia's web of lies, processed the release of funds. A glossy magazine profile of Olivia soon followed, showcasing her newfound wealth under the guise of hard-earned success. From tragedy to triumph, the article read, detailing how she was honoring Sophia's memory by creating a foundation in her name. The audacity made it clear, Olivia wasn't just stealing Sophia's fortune, she was rewriting her story entirely. As Sophia packed up her gear to leave Nepal, unaware of the storm awaiting her back home, Olivia basked in her victory. But she underestimated one thing, Sophia's resilience. Soon, Sophia would return. And when she did, the house of lies Olivia had so carefully constructed would begin to crumble. The Boston air was crisp and biting as Sophia stepped out of the taxi, her backpack slung over her shoulder and her camera case in hand. She felt a strange mix of relief and dread to be home. After weeks in the Himalayas, she had expected the comforting familiarity of the city to greet her, but instead, unease hung in the air. As the taxi pulled away, Sophia noticed something odd, a black sedan parked across the street with two men in suits sitting inside. They glanced at her briefly before averting their eyes. She frowned but shrugged it off, chalking it up to her exhaustion. She reached her apartment door and froze. The locks had been changed. Her heart dropped as she jiggled the doorknob again, just to be sure. A note taped to the door read, "For inquiries, please contact Olivia Grant." Sophia's pulse quickened. Olivia? What was her half-sister doing meddling with her apartment? Sophia stormed into Olivia's downtown office without an appointment. The receptionist barely had time to protest before Sophia pushed past her, throwing open the door to Olivia's private office. "Sophia," Olivia gasped, nearly knocking over her coffee as she sprang to her feet. For a split second, Sophia saw raw panic flash across Olivia's face before it was replaced with an exaggerated smile. "Oh my God, you're alive." "You sound disappointed," Sophia shot back, slamming the door behind her. Olivia's polished demeanor faltered. "What are you talking about? I thought you were lost in Nepal." "Everyone did. I even held a memorial for you." Sophia's jaw tightened. "You declared me dead, Olivia. You forged documents and tried to steal my inheritance. Don't even try to deny it." Olivia's lips twitched, but she quickly masked her irritation with a defensive tone. "I had no choice. You disappeared for months, no calls, no emails. How was I supposed to know you were fine?" Sophia stepped closer, her voice low and steady. "So your first instinct was to assume I was dead and raid my accounts? Don't play dumb, Olivia. I've seen the articles, the memorial, the foundation you're so proud of. You didn't even wait for proof." Olivia folded her arms, her confidence returning. "Oh, please, Sophia. Don't act like you're some innocent victim. You were gone. And if you'd just stayed gone, none of this would be a problem." Sophia's stomach churned at the sheer audacity of her sister's words. "You're unbelievable. Do you even hear yourself? You wanted me gone so badly, you fabricated my death just to get your hands on Dad's money. It's not just Dad's money. Olivia snapped, her veneer cracking. It's what should have been mine. You always got everything, his attention, his legacy, the inheritance. I'm his daughter too, Sophia. Why did you deserve it more than me? Sophia's voice softened, though her resolve remained steel. Because he saw you for who you are, Olivia. A manipulator. A liar. And now you've proven him right. Their heated argument was interrupted by a knock at the door. The two men Sophia had seen earlier in the black sedan entered, their presence imposing. Miss Grant, one of them said curtly, handing her a folder. We need you to come with us. There are some inconsistencies in your recent legal filings that require immediate clarification. Olivia's face paled. You can't just. The man cut her off. This is a formal investigation. Refusal to comply will escalate matters. Sophia crossed her arms, watching as Olivia's composure shattered. You did this. Olivia hissed at Sophia, her voice venomous. No, Olivia, Sophia replied, her tone cold. You did this to yourself. I'm just here to make sure you face the consequences. As the men escorted Olivia out of the office, Sophia stood in the middle of the room, taking it all in. The fancy desk, the awards Olivia had likely faked, the expensive handbag casually tossed on a chair, all symbols of Olivia's deception. For the first time in months, Sophia felt the tide turning in her favor. This wasn't over. Olivia would fight tooth and nail to protect her schemes, but Sophia was ready. She had fought for everything in her life, and she wasn't about to let her sister rewrite her story. Sophia sat at her mother's old desk, the one piece of furniture she had insisted on keeping after Lisa's passing. The wood was worn smooth from years of use, the drawers filled with yellowed receipts and handwritten notes. It had always been a treasure trove of Lisa's meticulous records, but tonight it held something far more sinister. Spread before her were files and documents she had obtained from Olivia's office, courtesy of the legal investigators who had raided the place. As Sophia sifted through the papers, the scale of her sister's betrayal came into sharp focus. The first discovery chilled Sophia to her core, a series of bank transfers from their father's estate, timed suspiciously close to Lisa's death. Olivia had started funneling money long before Sophia had even left for Nepal. Sophia traced the transactions, her stomach tightening as she realized Olivia had used forged signatures, her own and Lisa's, to authorize withdrawals. The money hadn't just disappeared, it had been invested in luxury properties, designer goods, and even Olivia's lifestyle brand, which she had touted as a labor of love in magazine interviews. But the real blow came when Sophia unearthed an email thread between Olivia and a shady private investigator. The emails outlined a chilling plan to fabricate Sophia's disappearance, while simultaneously pushing for their mother's assets to be liquidated. Once the old woman's out of the way, Olivia had written casually, it'll be easier to get Sophia declared incompetent or missing. I'll handle the PR, don't worry. Sophia clenched her fists as she read those words, the betrayal slicing deeper than any knife. Lisa had been sick for months before her passing, and Olivia had exploited that vulnerability without hesitation. The evidence didn't stop there. Sophia found fake letters supposedly written by their mother, praising Olivia as the responsible daughter and expressing doubts about Sophia's judgment. Olivia had even gone so far as to create a false narrative about Sophia's supposed mental instability, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of mutual acquaintances. Sophia took a shaky breath, setting down the papers. The scope of Olivia's deceit was staggering, premeditated, calculated, and utterly ruthless. She thought back to her mother's final days, the way Olivia had flitted in and out of the hospital with crocodile tears and insincere reassurances. Lisa must have suspected something was wrong, Sophia realized. That must have been why she had given Sophia the key to her safety deposit box just before passing away. The box. Sophia's heart raced as she grabbed her coat. She had almost forgotten about it in the chaos of her return. The bank manager was polite but wary as he led Sophia to a private room where the steel box awaited. Her hands trembled as she unlocked it, revealing its contents, legal documents, handwritten notes, and a small velvet pouch. She opened the pouch first. Inside was a gold locket containing 2 tiny photos, one of Lisa and one of a baby Sophia. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she clutched it to her chest. The documents, however, told a different story. Lisa had been aware of Olivia's schemes, at least in part. Letters written in Lisa's unmistakable script detailed her concerns about Olivia's manipulative tendencies and the possibility of her tampering with the family's finances. One letter stood out. "Sophia, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to tell you in person. Olivia has always resented you, and I'm afraid that resentment has turned into something darker. Protect yourself. I've done what I could to secure your future, but the rest is up to you. Be strong, my love. You have always been stronger than you think." Sophia read the words over and over until the ink seemed to burn into her memory. Lisa had known. She had tried to protect her. Armed with Lisa's letters, the forged documents, and Olivia's incriminating emails, Sophia knew what she had to do. The next day, she met with her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Grace who didn't mince words. As Sophia laid out the evidence, Grace's expression grew more intense. "This is more than enough to press charges," Grace said finally. "Fraud, forgery, embezzlement, it's all here. Olivia will have a hard time wiggling out of this." Sophia nodded, her resolve hardening. "I don't just want her stopped, Grace. I want her held accountable for everything she's done." Grace smiled grimly. "Then let's make sure she is." As Sophia left the lawyer's office that evening, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The road ahead would be long and grueling, but she wasn't alone. She had her mother's wisdom, her father's hidden legacy, and the unshakable belief that justice would prevail. Olivia had tried to erase her, but Sophia was still here, and she wasn't going anywhere. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Sophia stepped inside, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, but all she could hear was the dull thrum of her heartbeat. At the front of the room, Judge Lucas Thompson sat in his imposing chair, his presence commanding respect. The nameplate on the bench was simple but authoritative, a stark reminder of the connection Olivia had tried so hard to exploit and erase. Olivia, seated at the defendant's table, glanced nervously toward Sophia as she entered. Sophia held her gaze, her own expression calm but unyielding. She wasn't here to play games. The proceedings began with the sharp rap of Judge Thompson's gavel. "Court is now in session," he announced, his voice steady and unwavering. "We are here to address the matter of Olivia Grant, who stands accused of multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement." Olivia's lawyer, a man with a perpetually furrowed brow, rose to his feet. "Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. The allegations against her are based on misunderstandings and miscommunications." Sophia's lawyer, Grace, stood next. "Your Honor, the evidence will speak for itself." She stepped toward the bench, her tone measured and precise. "We will demonstrate that Olivia Grant's actions were deliberate, calculated, and designed to defraud my client, Sophia Daniels, of her rightful inheritance and assets." Judge Thompson's piercing gaze shifted to Olivia, who squirmed under the weight of his scrutiny. Sophia caught the flicker of recognition in Olivia's eyes as the judge's name sank in. She hadn't realized until now who would be presiding over this case. "Proceed," Judge Thompson said. The courtroom became a stage as Grace presented a parade of damning evidence. First, she introduced the forged documents, clear forgeries of Sophia's and Lisa's signatures. Forensic experts testified, explaining the discrepancies and confirming the fraud. Olivia's lawyer attempted to discredit the findings. "This could easily be a mistake. My client was under considerable stress after the passing of her father and stepmother. Emotions can cloud judgment." Grace didn't miss a beat. "Stress does not account for premeditation. We have emails between Ms. Grant and a private investigator outlining a deliberate scheme to declare Ms. Daniels deceased." She handed a printed email chain to the bailiff, who delivered it to Judge Thompson. The room fell silent as he read. His expression hardened as he turned his attention back to Olivia. "Ms. Grant," he said, his tone cold, Can you explain these correspondences? Olivia stammered, her confident veneer beginning to crack. I was just trying to. Grace cut her off, holding up a photograph of Olivia at the staged memorial service, smiling as she spoke to the gathered guests. This image was shared in a local news article that coincided with the fraudulent legal filings. Your Honor, it's clear that Ms. Grant fabricated not only my client's death, but also an entire narrative to secure her own financial gain. Next came Lisa's letters, retrieved from the safety deposit box. Grace read excerpts aloud, the words painting a vivid picture of Olivia's manipulative nature and long-standing resentment towards Sophia. Judge Thompson's expression softened momentarily as he heard Lisa's words, but his voice remained firm. The court will accept these letters as evidence. They speak to a pattern of behavior that cannot be ignored. The final blow came with testimony from the bank manager who had unknowingly facilitated Olivia's fraudulent transactions. She presented all the necessary paperwork, he admitted, his face pale. At the time, I had no reason to doubt her claims. But in hindsight, it's clear that the documents were falsified. Olivia's head dropped into her hands as the weight of the evidence became undeniable. When Grace finished her case, the room was tense with anticipation. Judge Thompson leaned forward, his eyes locking on Olivia. Ms. Grant, the evidence presented today is overwhelming. This is not the behavior of someone caught in a misunderstanding. This is the behavior of someone who has abused trust, manipulated systems, and betrayed their own family for personal gain. Olivia opened her mouth to speak, but the judge's gavel silenced her. Ms. Daniels, he said, turning to Sophia, you have shown extraordinary patience and resilience in bringing this matter to light. The court commends you for your efforts. Sophia nodded, her throat tight with emotion. This hearing is adjourned, Judge Thompson announced, his voice echoing in the silent room. The court will reconvene in 2 weeks to determine sentencing. As the gavel fell, Olivia turned to Sophia, her eyes filled with desperation. Sophia, please. Sophia raised a hand, cutting her off. Save it, Olivia. You made your choices, and now you'll face the consequences. Walking out of the courtroom, Sophia felt a surge of relief. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt like she was winning. The courtroom was packed for the sentencing, the air thick with anticipation. Olivia sat at the defendant's table, her once flawless composure crumbling. Her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, but Olivia stared straight ahead, her face pale and drawn. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Sophia sat near the front, her hands folded in her lap, her heart racing. This moment, while necessary, felt heavy with finality. Judge Lucas Thompson's voice carried weight as he addressed the room. After reviewing the evidence and testimony, this court finds the defendant, Olivia Grant, guilty on all charges, including fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Sophia heard Olivia gasp softly, but she didn't turn to look. The sentence, the judge continued, is 5 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 3 years, given good behavior. The murmurs from the gallery were hushed, but they vibrated with shock. Olivia's punishment had been expected, but hearing it aloud gave the moment a harsh clarity. Sophia had braced herself for this, but she couldn't have anticipated what came next. When Olivia's husband, Tom, was called to the stand to testify during the penalty phase, the room buzzed with curiosity. Tom, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, avoided Olivia's gaze as he was sworn in. What did you know about your wife's actions? The prosecutor asked. Tom hesitated, his face a mask of controlled emotion. Then he spoke. I became aware of Olivia's actions about halfway through her scheme. At first, she told me it was a misunderstanding, but over time, it became clear she had fabricated evidence to access funds that weren't hers. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Olivia turned to her husband, her face twisted with shock and fury. Tom, she hissed, her voice a strangled whisper. The prosecutor pressed on. Why didn't you report her actions to the authorities? Tom's shoulders sagged. I wanted to protect our family, but I couldn't condone what she was doing. When I realized the authorities were investigating, I came forward to cooperate fully. I couldn't risk losing my career or being implicated in something I didn't support. The betrayal was palpable, the courtroom buzzing with tension. Sophia felt no sympathy for Olivia, but she couldn't deny the sting of seeing another fracture in their already broken family. After the sentencing, the family's collapse was swift and public. Olivia's arrest had already made headlines, but Tom's testimony ensured her disgrace was complete. Their marriage unraveled overnight, with Tom filing for divorce and seeking sole custody of their 2 young children. Reporters hounded Tom for statements, but he kept his words measured. "My priority is my children's well-being," he told one outlet. "I can't speak for Olivia's choices, but I intend to build a stable life for my kids." The rest of Olivia's circle distanced themselves quickly. Friends stopped returning her calls, and business associates severed ties. The woman who had once thrived on her social connections was now utterly isolated. For Sophia, the victory was bittersweet. She had reclaimed her inheritance, cleared her name, and exposed Olivia's deception, but the emotional toll was undeniable. In the weeks following the sentencing, Sophia found herself revisiting old photo albums, flipping through images of her and Olivia as children. There were moments of genuine connection, she realized, birthday parties, family vacations, silly moments captured in grainy Polaroids. Somewhere along the way, that bond had been replaced by resentment and competition. "Do you think she ever cared?" Sophia asked Grace one evening as they reviewed the final steps in the legal process. Grace paused, choosing her words carefully. Maybe in her own way. But whatever love she had was overshadowed by her greed. Sophia nodded, though her heart ached at the thought. In the months that followed, Sophia began to rebuild her life. She used part of her reclaimed inheritance to establish a nonprofit in her mother's name, focused on supporting young artists from underprivileged backgrounds. The work gave her a sense of purpose and allowed her to honor Lisa's memory in a meaningful way. Still, there were moments when the weight of it all felt too much, when the silence of her apartment reminded her of the family she'd lost, even if losing them had been necessary. But as Sophia stood in the gallery of her first nonprofit-sponsored art exhibit, surrounded by vibrant photographs taken by young, aspiring artists, she felt a quiet sense of peace. Olivia had tried to steal her future, but Sophia had reclaimed it and built something even stronger in its place. The late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows of the small cafe where Sophia sat, her hands curled around a mug of chamomile tea. Across the table, Judge Lucas Thompson studied her with quiet intensity. His neatly pressed suit and measured demeanor reminded her of the imposing presence he had in the courtroom, but here, there was something softer, a vulnerability she hadn't expected. "I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet," Lucas said finally, his voice low and hesitant. Sophia took a sip of her tea, her emotions a swirl of apprehension and curiosity. "I wasn't sure I would either," she admitted. "But after everything that's happened, I think it's time to stop avoiding the past." Lucas nodded, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. "I owe you an apology, Sophia. For not being there. For letting your mother carry all the weight. She made it clear she wanted to protect you from my world, but I should have tried harder." Sophia studied him, searching for the cracks in his polished exterior. She saw them in the slight tremble of his hands, the flicker of regret in his eyes. "I've had a lot of questions about you," she said quietly. "Why you waited, why you didn't push harder to be in my life. But I think I understand now. You thought you were protecting me, even if it hurt." Lucas exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I did. But I see now that I might have misjudged what was best. I want to make things right, if you'll let me." Rebuilding a relationship with Lucas wasn't easy. Decades of absence couldn't be erased overnight, and Sophia wasn't ready to pretend the years of hurt didn't exist. But slowly, they began to bridge the gap. Lucas started attending events for the nonprofit Sophia had established in her mother's name, the Lisa Daniels Scholarship Foundation. The foundation provided grants to young artists who lacked the means to pursue their dreams, mirroring the struggles Sophia had faced in her early career. At one such event, Lucas stood beside Sophia as she addressed a room full of donors, volunteers, and scholarship recipients. My mother always believed in the power of hard work and creativity, Sophia said, her voice steady. She used to tell me that dreams are built one brick at a time. This foundation is my way of honoring her, of giving others the opportunities she fought so hard to give me. The room erupted into applause, and as Sophia stepped away from the podium, Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder. She would be proud of you, he said softly. Sophia smiled, blinking back tears. I hope so. Sophia also began using her inheritance to fund photography workshops for underprivileged children, traveling to schools and community centers to teach them how to tell their stories through the lens of a camera. In one of those workshops, a quiet boy named Jamal caught her attention. He rarely spoke, but his photographs spoke volumes, stark, beautiful images of his neighborhood, capturing both its struggles and its resilience. Your work is incredible, Sophia told him after reviewing his portfolio. Jamal shrugged, looking down. It's just pictures. No, Sophia said firmly. It's your voice. And people need to hear it. She offered him a scholarship through the foundation, ensuring he had the resources to continue pursuing his talent. Watching him light up as he realized someone believed in him reminded Sophia of her own journey. Through it all, the specter of Olivia loomed. Sophia often wondered if her half-sister ever thought about the damage she had caused or if she regretted anything at all. But as time passed, Sophia learned to let go of the anger. Olivia's choices had led to her downfall, and while Sophia would never forget the pain of betrayal, she refused to let it define her future. Her focus remained on building a life that honored her mother's legacy and embraced the second chance she'd been given with Lucas. One crisp autumn evening, Sophia and Lucas stood on the steps of the Scholarship Foundation's headquarters, watching the last light of day fade into the horizon. You've built something extraordinary here, Lucas said, his voice tinged with admiration. Sophia glanced at him, a small smile playing on her lips. I had a good example, she said. They stood in silence for a moment, the past and present blending into a bittersweet harmony. I'm proud of you, Sophia, Lucas said finally. Not just for what you've done, but for who you are. Sophia felt a warmth spread through her chest, the weight of years lifting slightly. Thank you, she said, her voice quiet but resolute. That means more than you know. As the city lights blinked to life around them, Sophia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She wasn't just rebuilding, she was thriving, her mother's lessons etched into every choice she made, her father's support strengthening the foundation she was creating. The soft hum of conversation filled the room as guests mingled at the gala for the Lisa Daniels Scholarship Foundation. Sophia stood near the window, her champagne flute barely touched, as she watched the city lights twinkle against the night sky. This event marked the Foundation's 5th anniversary, a milestone she could hardly have imagined during the turmoil of the past few years. The quiet strength she had built within herself felt almost surreal now, like a delicate thread woven into the fabric of her life. Sophia thought back to the moment her life had unraveled, Olivia's betrayal, the courtroom drama, the revelations about her father. The pain had been unbearable at times, leaving scars she knew would never fully fade. But those wounds had taught her something profound. She was far stronger than she had ever believed. Her relationship with Olivia had remained fractured, a casualty of her sister's choices. There had been no apology, no attempt at reconciliation. And yet, Sophia no longer felt the anger that had once consumed her. I can't change her, Sophia had told her therapist months earlier. But I can choose to let go of the bitterness. It hadn't been easy, but she had done it. Forgiveness didn't mean reopening old wounds, it meant freeing herself from their weight. Her father's role in her life had become a surprising source of comfort. Lucas had embraced her nonprofit work, offering not only financial support, but also encouragement. During one of their quiet conversations over tea, he had shared something that had stayed with her. You remind me of your mother, Lucas had said, his voice tinged with regret. She was fearless in her own way, determined to protect what mattered most. I see that in you every day. Sophia had smiled through tears, grateful for his words. As the gala continued, Sophia's thoughts shifted to the future. The foundation had grown beyond her wildest dreams, with scholarships helping dozens of young artists each year. But her vision was expanding. She had recently begun talks with local schools about incorporating arts programs into underserved communities, ensuring that creativity could thrive where it was needed most. Sophia had also returned to her own photography, traveling the world again, not to escape, but to reconnect. Her latest series, Resilience in the Everyday, celebrated ordinary people overcoming extraordinary challenges, a reflection of her own journey. The room quieted as Sophia stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warm against her skin. She looked out at the faces of donors, volunteers, and scholarship recipients, each one a part of this larger story. 5 years ago, she began, I stood at a crossroads. My life had been shaken to its core by betrayal and loss. But in the midst of that darkness, I found something I hadn't realized I was searching for: purpose. This foundation began as a way to honor my mother's legacy, but it's become so much more. It's a testament to the power of resilience, community, and the belief that we are all capable of creating something extraordinary from even the most difficult circumstances. The room erupted in applause, but Sophia wasn't finished. I've learned that identity isn't about the wealth we inherit or the challenges we face. It's about the choices we make and the values we live by. My mother taught me to build dreams one brick at a time, and today I stand here because of those lessons. Her voice softened as she concluded, to anyone who has ever felt lost, betrayed, or unsure of their place in the world, you are stronger than you think, and your story is still being written. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. Later, as the evening wound down, Lucas approached her, his eyes shining with pride. Your mother would have been so proud of you, he said, his voice steady. Sophia smiled, her heart full. I hope so. She gave me the tools to become the person I am. I just had to figure out how to use them. Together, they stepped outside, the crisp night air carrying the faint sound of music from the gala. For the first time in a long time, Sophia felt whole. Her past, while painful, had shaped her into someone who could stand tall in the face of adversity. And her future was brighter than she could have ever imagined. Sophia Daniels was no longer defined by betrayal or loss. She was defined by her strength, her compassion, and her unwavering belief in the power of dreams. As she looked out at the city lights, she smiled to herself, ready to embrace whatever came next.